Alright, so in this Neuroanatomy video, we are going to be talking about the brainstem, so let's get started. Alright, so I have talked about the anatomy of the brain, the basic anatomy of all the brain, but today we're going to be focusing on the brainstem and its core functions. So this video is going to be split up into two parts. First off, the physical anatomy of the brainstem, which I'm going to talk about right now. We're not going to be using lateral view, we're going to be using medial view. And we're going to be talking about the physical anatomy, and then we're going to talk about the functions of the brainstem. So let's get started. So let's check out medial view. And I'm going to label the brainstem and lateral view as well. So the brainstem is what connects your cerebrum, which is not the cerebellum, cerebrum, which you look at right here. It connects this part to the spinal cord. So it connects the brain part to the spinal cord. So the brainstem connects to the spinal cord and forms a connection. So this will extend down and eventually the spinal cord begins. So that's what will happen. And then the spinal cord just goes down. So essentially that's what the brainstem does, physically. Now, the brainstem is composed of multiple parts. First off, in the brainstem, we have over here, we have the midbrain. That's more of like right over here. Around here is the midbrain. And the midbrain is located at the top of the brainstem. And at that point, the brainstem begins. Now, in this area right over here, we have the pons. Now the pons, and I'm going to go over the function stuff, the functions of the brainstem in a second, but the pons and the other part of the brainstem, the medulla, they are very important in the function part of the brainstem. So this is basically where the function comes from. The midbrain isn't too much related to the function, but I mean, I guess the midbrain does have like vision, hearing, and stuff. But basically, you have the main function is the pons and the medulla. And alright, so down over here we have, in this area, we have our medulla. And the medulla is located right over here. Now, this is a physical anatomy of our brainstem. These are the three major components of our brainstem. Now, a thing to note is the brainstem also has a lot of cranial nerves. Now, I'm not going to go over every single cranial nerve, but I'm just letting you know that, and cranial nerves are basically nerves that come right off the brain. So we have lots of cranial nerves on the brainstem, just a heads up. So now let's talk about the actual function. Now, the midbrain, pons, and the medulla all have key functions. Now, the pons and the medulla have lots of functions. The midbrain also has functions, but we're going to talk about it. So let's start off with the midbrain, because it's the top. Now the midbrain is basically like sleep cycle, sleep cycle, we have vision, situational awareness, and just basic like awareness, alertness. We also have like situational awareness, we have body temperature, we have temperature, we have hearing. Auditory system is also linked to the midbrain. So auditory, that's basically the main part of the midbrain. That's what you're going to find. So, yeah. It's basically your sleep cycle, vision, situational awareness, temperature, and auditory. Now, let's move down the list and go to the pons. Now, your pons contains a lot of function. Now, the pons is also linked to your sleep. Right, almost everything is related to your sleep over there. And related to your sleep, we also have an auditory relation. Also related to hearing. The pons is also related to the 5 senses. So we have taste. We have the movement of the eyes. So I talked about the eye movement, the muscles of the eyes, your opening and closing eyes, and the pons regulates that. So I'm just going to do eye movement. Eye movement, sleep, auditory, taste, eye movement. Really, basically anything. You have touch. Touching is a big part, especially like you have cranial nerves that relate to your facial structure in the pons. So a lot of cranial nerves will come off of the pons, and that's also related to like facial movement. So I'm going to do facial movement as well because it's just related to it. Because there's lots of cranial nerves, as I said. So this would be like twitching your eyes or something like that. So especially when you're sleeping and stuff. Now we're going to go down the list to the last part, which is the medulla. Now your medulla is very, very important. Here's where all the good stuff happens. We have your respiratory stuff happens here, your breathing. So your breathing rate, cardiac function happens over here. So again, this would be like heart rate and stuff. And also we have your blood pressure. And the medulla is also related to your more of your vital functions of your body, such as like food poisoning and stuff, is also related to your medulla. So yeah. And obviously you have your heart rate, which is also falls into the cardiac, your breathing, etc. So that's the basic function of your brainstem. That's what the brainstem does. Over here we have physical anatomy, and over here we have function. So hopefully this video is helpful, and yeah, that's the brainstem.